September 15, 1945, Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. Sergeant Hiroshi Yamada stepped off the bus and smelled something he hadn't known in years. Meat, real meat. He didn't speak, didn't salute, just stood there, staring at the smoke rising from a steel drum behind the mess hall. A young American private flipped sausages on a flat-top grill, wearing sunglasses, laughing. Yamada was handed a tray: cornbread, stewed greens, mashed potatoes with butter so yellow it looked fake, and there, in the middle, 2 thick slices of roast beef, still steaming. He blinked. His stomach twisted with a pain that wasn't quite hunger. Back in Burma, he had written home, "The Americans eat like pigs. Meat 3 times a day. They will collapse under their own softness." But now, with a fork in hand, he hesitated. The beef was pink in the center. Juices soaked into the potatoes. No ceremony, no ration line, no officer's permission. Just food. He took a bite, closed his eyes, and something inside him, something forged in steel, and flag and emperor, began to tremble. He didn't know it yet, but this slice of meat would be the first crack in the foundation of everything he believed. Summer 1944. The jungles of northern Burma bled heat and mud. Sergeant Hiroshi Yamada, 31st Infantry Regiment, Imperial Japanese Army, had gone a week without proper food. His boots had rotted, his rifle jammed every other day, but his spirit, unbroken. He believed in sacrifice, in hunger, in dying with honor. Bushido wasn't a slogan. It was marrow. They were told, "American soldiers need steak. You need only your emperor." And he believed it. In briefings, Japanese officers mocked the Americans. They feed their men like cows, butter, candy, soft bread. They have no soul. Maps were drawn, arrows scrawled in red grease pencil. The plan? Grind down American spirit with terrain and starvation. It worked. For a while. Yamada remembered the first time they ambushed a U.S. convoy near Mietkina. They expected to find weapons. Instead, they found crates of pork, powdered eggs, canned peaches, chewing gum, even cigarettes wrapped in foil with tiny cartoons. The young private next to Yamada laughed. "These fools bring dessert to war." They set fire to it all. But something stuck with Yamada. How fresh it smelled. Even burned, the meat made his mouth water. He pushed the thought aside. Spiritual strength mattered more than flesh. Back in Tokyo, propaganda painted a clear picture. Americans were decadent, bloated, distracted by jazz and Coca-Cola. The Japanese spirit would outlast them all. Even in the field, orders echoed the same message. They may have machines, but we have devotion. Food shortages were framed as nobility. Rice balls and boiled roots became symbols of national pride. Meat was for officers or dreams. Yamada stopped dreaming. He boiled leather from an old belt once. His men chewed tree bark. Every bite became a prayer. Then the rumors began. Japanese POWs captured in the Pacific weren't executed. They were put on ships, sent to camps in the American heartland. Some said they were tortured. Others claimed the opposite. Books, warmth, even movies. But the most absurd rumor? They were being fed steak. The officers scoffed. Let them eat steak. It will make them weaker. Yamada nodded. But late at night, when his stomach coiled, he wasn't so sure. One evening, an American leaflet floated down from a reconnaissance plane. It showed a smiling prisoner holding a metal tray. Beef, corn, pie. Printed beneath in perfect kanji. Surrender with honor. You will be fed. Yamada spat on it, but he kept the paper. In the months that followed, disease spread, supplies vanished, morale cracked. Still, the belief held firm. America would crumble under its own weight. Yamada never questioned that, not yet. They called him Ichiro, the quiet one with hollow cheeks and a limp in his left leg. He was captured near the Salween River after a failed counterattack. 2 months later, they saw him again, not in chains, not limping. He was standing beside a group of American medics near a Red Cross tote in Rangoon, wearing clean clothes, cheeks fuller, eyes calm. At first, Yamada thought it was a hallucination, just another trick played by fever and hunger. But others saw it too. Some whispered, some cursed. One corporal shouted, "Traitor!" Yamada said nothing. He watched as Ichiro handed out letters to wounded prisoners, even bowed. That night, Yamada sat under a tarp of tattered canvas, trying to make sense of what he had seen. Ichiro had been captured, fed, clothed, allowed to help. No scars, no shame. Was it weakness or something else? Then came the letter, typed, delivered by a British liaison officer. It was from a Japanese soldier held at a camp in Colorado. The words felt foreign. They give us books, soap, blankets. We eat 3 meals a day. Meat. Real meat. I don't know if I should feel lucky or broken. Yamada folded it carefully, tucked it under his belt. The others refused to read it. One officer burned his copy, declaring it poison. But Yamada didn't burn his. He didn't read it again either. It simply stayed there, pressed against his hip. A quiet, unspoken weight. Days later, an American patrol was ambushed and forced to surrender. 5 men. The Japanese commander ordered the prisoners interrogated, then executed. Yamada watched. One of the Americans, maybe 19 years old, begged, "I have food. Take it. Just let me write home." He pulled out a tin of roast chicken. Still sealed. Still warm. No one touched it. They shot him. Afterwards, someone opened the tin and placed it on a rock near Yamada. He stared at it. Steam rising. Faint scent of herbs. And for the first time since Burma began, he felt something worse than hunger. He felt envy. He looked away. But the smell stayed with him, followed him like a ghost. By January 1945, Burma had become a graveyard with vines. The monsoon never stopped. Trucks drowned in mud, maps blurred with mildew, radio contact faded, so did orders. Yamada and his unit, what was left of it, had been living off boiled leaves and weevil-infested rice. The officers ate first, then the non-coms, then, if anything remained, the rest. One night, a lieutenant passed down a tin labeled squid in broken English. Inside, gelatinous sludge. Yamada gagged. He forced it down anyway. The next morning, Private Sato collapsed during roll call. The medics said it was beriberi. Yamada suspected starvation. They buried him beneath a half-dead palm tree with no ceremony. There was no strength left for grief. Meanwhile, rumors kept growing. Captured Americans were being repatriated, returned to combat. Some had even gained weight in captivity. Yamada heard stories. Red Cross parcels with chocolate, butter, cigarettes, letters from families, packages from church groups. One corporal claimed he saw a captured American in India eating ham from a metal can with a fork. They laughed at the image, but not for long. That same week, a U.S. airdrop missed its target. Crates tumbled into the treetops near Yamada's post. They cracked open like eggs. Cans of beef stew, powdered milk, boxes of instant coffee, napkins, plastic spoons, packaged pepper. One Japanese soldier ran forward, only to be shot by his own officer for breaking discipline. The rest just stared. It was like seeing a different kind of war. A war where the enemy's weakest still lived better than their best. Yamada picked up a spoon, held it for a moment, clean, smooth. Stamped U.S. Army, 1944. He tucked it into his pocket, not as a trophy, as a question. That night, the officers read a dispatch. The enemy is weak, victory is near. Hold fast to the Emperor. Yamada said nothing, but in the dark, he felt that spoon in his hand and realized the enemy wasn't getting weaker. They were just getting full. September 2nd, 1945. Yamada was aboard the cargo ship U.S. General G. M. Randall, bound for America, not as a soldier, but as a prisoner. The war was over. The Emperor had spoken. His voice, once mythic, now replayed through broken loudspeakers like a fading echo. Yamada didn't cry, didn't speak. He just stared at the ocean, too numb to feel shame. After weeks at sea, they reached San Francisco. He expected mockery, spit, chainsaws. What he got instead was a clipboard, a warm coat, and hot tea. Then came the train ride. Through endless wheat fields, past white barns and billboards, offering Coca-Cola, 5 cents. Men worked the land with machines the size of tanks. Children waved as the train passed. No hatred, no fear, just America. Camp McCoy sat nestled between pine trees and wide roads. The fences were tall, but clean. The guards wore smiles and sidearms. The barracks had heating. But it was the mess hall that undid him. The line moved quickly. Everyone, German, Italian, Japanese, was served the same. Baked beans, potato salad, a slice of cherry pie. And in the center of his tray, roast beef, thick, juicy, still steaming. He sat down across from a German prisoner named Weber, who gestured with a grin. "You'll like Tuesdays." "Always meat." Yamada nodded, mute. He picked up the fork. tasted the meat, and something inside him cracked. Not from betrayal, not from fear, from recognition. This wasn't decadence, it wasn't softness, it was power. Silent, systemic, relentless. It was a nation that could feed its enemies. While rebuilding Europe, he didn't finish the meal. Not because he couldn't understand how. The first thing Yamada noticed was the chart on the wall. Next to the mess hall entrance, printed in color, behind glass, a meal schedule, each day down to the calorie. Beef on Tuesdays, chicken Fridays, pork Saturdays. Underneath, per Geneva Convention, nutritional standards for all prisoners. In Japan, soldiers ate what they could find. Civilians starved in silence. POWs? They were ghosts. But here, he was being measured, tracked, fed like he mattered. The guards enforced rules, but rarely shouted. When a fight broke out between a German and a Japanese prisoner, they didn't beat them. They separated them. One was sent to wash dishes, the other to mend boots. No cages, no beatings, just order. Yamada kept watching. He noticed the trucks arrive like clockwork, always at dawn. Same brand, same bottom, some crow, stamped with codes, colors, numbers. One morning, he leaned closer as they unloaded. Inside, tins of Spam, corned beef, butter, all labeled by region. Texas, Ohio, Iowa. It wasn't random. It was a system. At roll call, a Japanese interpreter read out camp announcements. Some prisoners requested books. Others signed up for English classes. Yamada hesitated, then added his name. By November, he was reading Stars and Stripes, the U.S. Army's newspaper. On page 4, an article about food logistics, a factory in Illinois that canned beef 24 hours a day. It fed not only troops, but prisoners too. Yamada underlined a sentence. Every man deserves protein, even if he no longer holds a weapon. That night, he wrote his first full sentence in English. America feeds even the ones they capture. A month later, he visited the camp library. It smelled of old wood and glue. A volunteer librarian handed him a cookbook, American Family Recipes. He flipped through. Meatloaf, pot roast, barbecue brisket, photographs, instructions, systems. In Japan, meat was ritual, reserved, symbolic. Here, it was everywhere, equal, accessible, industrial. It hit him like a blow to the chest. They didn't treat meat as treasure, because they had more than enough. And in that abundance, there was something terrifying. Yamada sat alone in the library, surrounded by words he could barely read, and whispered to no one. They don't win by being strong. They win because they never run out. Winter came early to Camp McCoy. Frost coated the windows in the barracks, thick like sea glass. Yamada woke every morning to the smell of coffee and bacon. American guards shoveled snow in wool coats, laughing, always laughing. One December morning, the prisoners were called to the main hall. An American colonel, tall, silver-haired, stood before them with a translator. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just spoke. "Your empire didn't fall because of bombs," the translator said. "Brown. It fell because you couldn't feed your sons." Yamada didn't blink. But something inside him collapsed. Later that day, he sat in the yard alone, cradling a cup of warm broth. A German POW approached. Weber, again. He lit a cigarette and said, "I saw Dachau. You think we were strong. But we starved our people, too." Yamada nodded slowly. He had no words, only memories. Jungle nights filled with the moans of dying boys, fingers scraping rice from empty tins, dreams haunted by the crack of bones boiling in soup pots. He remembered the pride, the speeches, the hunger. It had become part of them, like breath. And here, across the ocean, the enemy didn't even understand starvation. They planned their meals with charts. They built dining halls before they built barracks. The humiliation wasn't in defeat. It was in the realization that the enemy never even needed to hate him. They simply outgrew him. Weeks passed. Then, Christmas. To his shock, every prisoner received a parcel. Wrapped, tagged. Inside Yamada's box, socks, chocolate, tobacco, and a small tin of roast turkey. On the label, donated by the Methodist Church of Des Moines. He stared at it for a long time, not because it was food, but because someone who had lost a brother or son, still believed he deserved to eat. He opened the tin. The meat smelled like forgiveness. That night, he wrote the only letter he ever sent from camp. "We believed they were soft. That meat made them weak. We were wrong. They feed even their enemies because they can." He paused. Then added, "We died in hunger, while they delivered turkey to men they didn't know." He folded the paper, didn't sign it. It wasn't for anyone, just a confession. By February 1946, snow began to melt along the fences of Camp McCoy. But inside the mess hall, the rhythm never changed. Every tray, every scoop, every calorie, planned. Yamada had started volunteering in the kitchen, not for extra food, for answers. He stood behind the serving line, watching a sergeant tick boxes on a clipboard. Tuesday, beef stew, white bread, orange slices. Next to that, 3,800 calories per prisoner. Protein target, 120 grams. It wasn't kindness. It was protocol. He followed the supply truck one morning, just once. A convoy from Milwaukee. 3 identical trucks. Same route, same timing. Inside, butter from Minnesota, pork from Iowa, flour from Kansas. Every box the same size. Every label typed. Yamada crouched beside the crates, running his fingers over the smooth lettering. U.S. Department of War. Ration set C. It was like opening a watch and seeing gears. Flawless, invisible, precise. He thought of how rations were handled in Burma. 1 guard, 1 officer. 1 scribbled list. Then file, nothing. No backup, no repeat, no rhythm. In America, even mistakes were absorbed by design. One afternoon, a shipment was delayed by snow. No panic, no screaming. The cook opened storage lockers packed weeks earlier. Everything had been accounted for. Beef, beans, crackers, coffee, enough for a month. That night, Yamada sat with a U.S. corporal named Hall, a mess clerk from Michigan. Hall was folding napkins, smiling. Yamada asked, quietly, "Why meat? For prisoners?" Hall shrugged. "Same reason we feed soldiers. Hungry men are dangerous. Full men. Listen." Then he added more softly, "Also, my mom sends Christmas cookies to German POWs. Says it keeps her sane." Yamada stared at the napkins. They were folded the same way every time. Discipline, not just in war, but in butter, bread, and paper linen. Later, in the camp library, he read a report left open by accident. Nutritional Schedule for Axis Prisoners, 1945. Attached. Charts, formulas, backups for meat delivery across 5 states. He copied one sentence onto the back of a wrapper. "A system that feeds its enemies will never lack the means to defend itself." He tucked it into his sleeve, not to keep warm, to remember what power really looked like. Spring arrived like a revelation. One morning, Yamada stood in the rec hall, staring at a poster. It showed a cutaway drawing of a food processing plant in Iowa. Assembly lines, pressure cookers, labeled crates. At the bottom, "Feeding Victory, every meal matters." He traced the lines with his eyes. Each worker added only one piece, but together, they built something unstoppable. Weeks later, the camp arranged a film screening, an educational reel. No propaganda, just facts. Black and white footage played. Rows of women in aprons sealing cans of beef. Conveyor belts clacking like rifle fire. Stacks of rations bound for Europe, the Pacific, and prisoner camps. The narrator's voice echoed. "Standardization, modular logistics, victory, through systems, not chance." Yamada didn't blink. He was watching the real weapon of war. Not bombs, not bullets, blueprints. In Japan, food distribution was sacred, tied to rank, family, geography. A general ate first, a private last. In America, food was modular, repeatable, scalable. Yamada asked a camp official once, "How do you produce so much?" The man smiled. "We don't produce it all here. We connect producers." 3 words carved into Yamada's mind. Connect, not control. In a makeshift classroom, he read from an English manual. A decentralized supply chain is less vulnerable to sabotage and faster to adapt under stress. He stopped, exhaled. That wasn't just a sentence, it was a philosophy. Japan had worshipped control, but America worshipped throughput. Yamada thought of the ration carts back in Burma. One breaks, 10 men starve. Here, one truck fails, 10 more replace it. Even prisoners were insulated from collapse. One afternoon, Yamada helped organize the dry goods closet. He found cans labeled "Produced by Ford Motor Company, Subsidiary Food Division." He blinked. Ford making meat? That night, he wrote in his journal, the same factory that made tanks, made meatloaf. Not because it was sentimental, because it was inevitable. At war's end, Japan still relied on horses for supply runs. America, trucks, trains, canned beef dropped from planes. They didn't win because they were lucky. They won because they prepared to never run out. Yamada ran his fingers over the cold tin, pressed it to his forehead, not in worship, in surrender. In 1945, the United States produced over 15 billion pounds of meat. That's not a myth, not propaganda. It's in the War Department's annual report. Every U.S. soldier, no matter the theater, received over 4,000 calories a day. Protein, sugar, salt, delivered by rail, sea, parachute, or truck. Even prisoners, men like Yamada, were fed nearly the same. In contrast, Japanese soldiers averaged less than 1,800 calories. On paper. In reality, less. Often rotten. Often none. Men died with rice still stuck in their teeth because the bags never arrived. In one intercepted communique from the Imperial staff, the jungle has consumed more of our men than the enemy has. Meanwhile, the United States built a pipeline under the English Channel. 4-inch hoses delivered fuel to tanks in Normandy. They built the Red Ball Grease, a convoy system with over 6,000 trucks, running day and night, bringing ammunition, medicine, and roast beef in cans. One German officer later wrote, "I realized we had lost the war when I saw American trucks hauling ice cream to the front." Yamada read that line in a borrowed magazine. He folded the page carefully because it felt familiar. He remembered the heat in Burma, the hunger, the silence after a friend died chewing on bark. And now he understood. The war was never fair. Not because of morals, not because of courage, but because one side treated food not as luxury, but as math, measured, scheduled, delivered at scale. He saw it clearly now. America didn't just build weapons, it built certainty. It built an army that never had to ask where its next meal came from. An army that could fight longer, rest faster, return stronger. One American general had said it best. An army moves in its stomach. Ours never stops moving. In the end, the Axis powers weren't divided by ideology alone. They were outproduced, outplanned, outfed. The Empire of Japan had fire in its heart, but no fuel in its belly. Yamada closed the magazine, closed his eyes, and whispered, not in shame, but in awe. They fed their enemies better than we fed our own sons. December 1946. 1 year after the surrender. Before repatriation, a small group of POWs were granted a final visit to a working American facility. Yamada was one of them. He stepped into the Swift & Company meatpacking plant on the south side of Chicago. The air was sharp with cold and iron. Blades hissed. Conveyor belts clacked in rhythm. Men in white coats moved like clockwork. No waste, no pause. Beef hung from steel hooks, sectioned and with surgical speed. Labeled, boxed, unloaded into trucks with wheels taller than a man. Yamada didn't flinch. He only stared. A guide explained how each cut was sorted by weight, destination, calorie count. Nothing was guessed. Everything measured. At the end of the tour, a supervisor handed him a small gift. A vacuum-sealed tin of corned beef, stamped Made in Chicago, for Pacific shipment. The same meat he had eaten as a prisoner, still warm from the assembly line. Yamada took it, cradled it. Outside, snow fell in silence. Back in Japan, rice was still rationed. Children stood in lines that curled around temples. Meat remained a rumor. That night, in his journal, Yamada wrote, "They built an empire with supply chains and conveyor belts. We built ours on honor and empty bowls." His final entry was just one line. "We died in hunger. They fed their enemies."